Operations forces consist of 5 elements: Special Forces, Civil Affairs, Psychological Operations, Special Operations Aviation, and Rangers. And now, Civil Affairs.
Members of the United States Armed Forces must comply with the provisions of international agreements and law when dealing with the people and governmental agencies of a host or liberated territory. The United States Armed Forces must also comply with the provisions of United States national law. There are 4 basic missions of civil affairs. United States Army Civil Affairs soldiers support general purpose forces missions in wartime by identifying for the tactical commander local civilian resources, facilities, and support for U.S. forces through area studies and on-the-ground area surveys. Civil affairs soldiers also assist in minimizing local population interference with U.S. military operations. An example of this is refugee or displaced persons evacuation and care. United States Army Civil Affairs soldiers support Special Operations Forces conducting foreign and internal defense missions during peacetime and pre-crisis by training, advising, and assisting host nation military forces in mobilizing and motivating its citizens to assist their government and military forces. An example would be teaching host nation military forces how to plan, train for, and conduct civic action projects such as digging wells, road construction, and other such projects that will enhance the image of the host nation government and military forces in the eyes of the local citizens. United States Army Civil Affairs soldiers support Special Operations Forces in unconventional warfare missions by providing civil affairs analysis of the political, economic, and social vulnerabilities of the area of operations, and by giving training in this analysis to unconventional warfare units. An example of this assistance is a Civil Affairs EEI, or Essential Elements of Information briefing prior to a Special Operations Forces mission.
Civil Affairs. I'm here to give you your CA portion of the brief Urgent Fury. In this AO, the language will generally not be a problem. A majority of the population speaks English, even though they speak a Creole English, which is a French-based English, or you may hear some speaking with an Australian accent or a heavy British accent.
United States Army Civil Affairs soldiers also support civil administration missions directed by the National Command Authority. These civil administration missions include assisting a host government to improve or maintain a stable and viable civil government, or establishing a temporary civil administration in friendly territory where U.S. forces are located in order to maintain order and temporarily provide life-sustaining services until the host government can be reestablished. Additionally, civil affairs forces can establish a civil administration in enemy territory occupied by U.S. forces to provide for life-sustaining services such as water, electricity, to maintain order, and to control the distribution of goods and services within the occupied territory until autonomy is restored to civil authorities as directed by the National Command Authority. Civil affairs operations are those activities conducted in peace and in war which facilitate the relationship among U.S. military forces, civil authorities, and people in a nation in which those military forces are operating. In a free country, these activities are accomplished through coordination with local officials when possible. They are covered by a treaty or an agreement, such as a status of forces agreement. Civil affairs personnel require language proficiency and area expertise in their area of operation.
Now, psychological operations.
The purpose of all psychological operations is to create in foreign groups the emotions, the attitudes, and the behavior to support the achievement of national objectives. Psychological operations, PSYOP, will influence policy and decisions, the ability to govern, the ability to command, the will to fight, the will to support, the will to win. Psychological operations can increase the combat power of friendly forces and adversely affect the combat power of the enemy. This is accomplished basically by attacking the identified weaknesses of the opposing forces through a planned and coordinated PSYOP campaign. The PSYOP tools are radio, television, leaflets, newspapers,
Let's get that to the press as soon as you can.
Right.
loudspeakers,
serán retornados a Cuba comenzando el 4 de noviembre de 1983. 100 serán retornados el primer día.
and face-to-face communication. The recent Grenada action provided a classic example of psychological operations. PSYOP teams went in with the first combat troops, and they stayed after the troops were gone. Television was not used in Grenada. There were very few sets in the country. But in another situation where those few TVs were owned by key government personnel or other leaders, television would have been an ideal medium to use. United States Army PSYOP personnel are trained and prepared to support in these actions. And many times there are peacetime PSYOP needs before armed conflict breaks out. PSYOP effectively builds combat power, both strategically and tactically. When combat units are required to adopt a defensive posture, PSYOP can remain on the offense. In retrograde operations, PSYOP provides civilian control measures and can support counterattacks. In relief operations, PSYOP can remain to support the incoming unit. In consolidation operations, PSYOP will reorient and educate the civilian population in liberated or occupied areas. The United States Army PSYOP mission is to support U.S. national policy, to support military operations, and to be prepared to conduct PSYOP unilaterally or in support of other military services and United States government agencies. We also give PSYOP training, advice, and assistance to other U.S. armed forces and friendly nations. Psychological operations create a favorable image, gain popular support, and weaken enemy forces. PSYOP is now a major weapon in 20th century warfare.
Now, Special Operations Aviation.
Special Operations Forces Aviation basically turns on two things. They are the different aircraft available as well as the tactics to be used. Naturally, both are determined by the mission. We may use the UH-60 Black Hawk or the UH-1H Huey helicopter to complete the assigned mission. Most of the Special Operations Forces missions are clandestine and high risk. Therefore, we will use many tactics and seldom do we fly in a straight line. As well, we are trained in techniques and procedures for air operations in support of unconventional warfare, which may be applied to other Special Operations missions. Special Operations Forces Aviation is prepared to fly on short notice anywhere in the world.
The primary mission of the Military Airlift Command's Special Operations units is to support the Army's Special Operations Forces. Our support consists of infiltration behind enemy lines, resupply of food, munitions, and equipment, exfiltration from objective areas after mission completion, firepower in support of ground forces, and leaflet dissemination and radio TV broadcast missions which enhance the overall PSYOP campaign. The commander of the recently formed 23rd Air Force directs the USAF Special Operations efforts through the 2nd Air Division located at Hurlburt Field, Florida. The Air Division's subordinate units consist of the 1st Special Operations Wing with 3 Special Operations Squadrons. Other units include the 1st Special Operations Squadron, Clark Air Base, Philippines, the 7th Special Operations Squadron, Rhein-Main Air Base, Germany, Detachment 1, Howard Air Force Base, Panama, and the Special Operations School, also at Hurlburt. Let's examine our Special Operations aircraft. This is the MC-130 E model aircraft, which is commonly known as the Combat Talon or Blackbird. Its special features include a terrain following and terrain avoidance radar system which permits low-level penetration of enemy territory so as to avoid radar detection. Its sophisticated navigational package allows it to pinpoint hard-to-find drop zones and landing areas. The Combat Talon can also exfiltrate forces from unimproved landing zones when they are available. However, when these landing zones are not available, one of the rotary wing members of the Special Operations family provides the greatest capability. The HH-53H Pavlo III helicopter also possesses special equipment that gives it unique capabilities. Its terrain-following terrain avoidance radar provides a night all-weather capability for long-range infiltration and exfiltration missions. The best source of firepower is the AC-130 gunship. The H models are flown by the active force, and the older A models are manned by the Air Force Reserves. The AC-130's ability to support ground units with surgical and timely firepower was well demonstrated in the recent actions in Grenada. The gunship can attack critical enemy positions without jeopardizing nearby civilians or causing unnecessary collateral damage. The gunship's infrared and low light level television systems allow it to search for and acquire targets at night. Once the target is acquired, one of 4 weapon systems can be used. The 2 7.62 miniguns are effective against personnel in the open. The 2 20mm Vulcan cannons can be used against light trucks and personnel. The 40mm cannon proved itself as a truck killer during the war in Vietnam, and the H model's 105mm cannon is effective against enemy bunkers, lightly armored vehicles, and personnel. Both the gunship and the Combat Talon are equipped with in-flight refueling capability to provide for longer range and increased station time. The United States Air Force Special Operations personnel and equipment can provide the support needed to get the job done.
And now, Rangers.
The primary mission of Ranger units is strike operations. This includes raids against high-value targets, interdiction of lines of communications, recovery operations of sensitive equipment or personnel, and any mission assigned by higher authority. Rangers are the primary light infantry ground force available to U.S. planners for the conduct and support of special operations. They can be deployed anywhere in the world on short notice by land, air, or sea, supporting United States resolve or support of allied nations or host countries. The employment of such a force provides a clear signature of our readiness to commit combat forces to protect U.S. interests abroad. Rangers are elite forces composed of highly trained and motivated soldiers. All are airborne qualified, and most are Ranger qualified. The unique thing about Rangers is that they are 4-time volunteers. They volunteer for the Army, they volunteer for airborne training, and then they volunteer to serve in one of the Ranger battalions. After serving in a rifle squad for a reasonable amount of time and being selected by their chain of command, finally they volunteer for attendance at the United States Army Ranger School. Rangers are highly trained in patrolling techniques, airborne and air mobile operations. To enhance their capabilities, Rangers conduct off-post deployments to include jungle, desert, and Arctic environments each year. Selected members of each battalion conduct special skills training in advanced demolitions, scuba, and halo insertion techniques.
Special Forces, Civil Affairs, Psychological Operations, Special Operations Aviation, Rangers. Those are the 5 components of the Special Operations Forces. The 5th Special Forces Group is stationed at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, with 3 battalions. The 7th Special Forces Group is also stationed at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, with 2 battalions, while its 3rd Battalion is in Panama and under the operational control of SOUTHCOM, or Southern Command. The 10th Special Forces Group is stationed at Fort Devens, Massachusetts, with 2 battalions and 1 battalion deployed to Germany and under the operational control of EUCOM, or the European Command. The 1st Special Forces Group will be reactivated soon. It should be noted that 58% of the Army's Special Forces strength rests in reserve units. There are 2 U.S. Army Reserve Special Forces groups, the 11th and the 12th, and 2 Army National Guard Special Forces groups, the 19th and the 20th. The 96th Civil Affairs Battalion and the 4th Psychological Group are the only units of their kind in the active Army structure. Both are stationed at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. About 99% of our civil affairs assets and about 80% of our PSYOP assets are in reserve components. Currently, there are 2 U.S. Army Ranger battalions. One is stationed at Fort Lewis, Washington, and the other at Fort Stewart, Georgia. They, too, are a part of the Special Operations Command. Plans are currently underway to expand Ranger forces. Special Operations Forces function under many varied command and control arrangements. The exact structure is determined by the assigned mission, tasks, and the requirements of the commander. Let me show you some fairly typical SOF command and control situations. Usually there is a Special Operations Command headquarters. The SOC is a joint headquarters with staff representatives from all U.S. unconventional warfare forces, as well as non-military agencies, and includes its own combat service support elements. An SOC may be formed to satisfy UW requirements. It is subordinate to an area unified command, and usually it is a semi-permanent arrangement.
I am not an atomic playboy.